Hey kids, welcome home, and welcome back to our terrifying descent into the curse of Poltergeist. Clearly, the filming of the 1982 horror classic left the cast feeling the true primal fear of the film, with the realization that the pivotal climax of the film was providing a glimpse into the harsh reality occurring in real life as well. In the film, the headstones were removed, but the bodies were not. And on set, the bodies that remained were real. If that were not enough, the cast would soon find themselves plagued with horrors in their real lives, even after the film had wrapped. No parent should ever outlive their child, but for 2/3 of the children of Poltergeist, their parents would be forced to do just that.
Actress Dominique Dunn, star of the current film Poltergeist, died today in a Los Angeles hospital.
My relationship with my daughter was perfect. I adored her, and she me. And her last words to me were, she said, "I love you, Daddy." And, I always have that. And, so many times when I visit families where the child has been murdered, and so many times I've heard them say, "If only I told her."
Dominique Ellen Dunn was born on November 23, 1959, in Santa Monica, California, to Mother Ellen and Father Dominic. Ellen was a ranching heiress, and Dominic a writer, producer, and actor. Dunn was the youngest of 3 children, with 2 older brothers, Alexander and Griffin Griffin himself would also find his chosen career in acting. Dunn's childhood was pretty typical. She would attend Harvard Westlake School in Los Angeles, Taft School in Watertown, Connecticut, and Fountain Valley School in Fountain, Colorado. Upon graduating, Dunn would travel to Florence, Italy, spending a whole year abroad learning Italian. She studied acting at Milton Katsalis' workshop and appeared in various stage productions, including My 3 Angels, The Mousetrap, and West Side Story. Before Dominique Dunn would take on the fateful role of Dana Freeling, she was already establishing herself as a rising star in Hollywood. She made her on-screen debut in a made-for-TV movie by the name of Diary of a Teenage Hitchhiker, and would move on to recurring roles on the TV shows Family and Breaking Away. After being cast as the eldest daughter in the iconic Poltergeist, things appeared to be going nowhere but up for the young starlet. But as we have learned, things are not always as they seem, and reality was about to come crashing down on the young star. Dunn would meet John Thomas Sweeney at a party in 1981, and she was immediately taken with the young sous chef. The feelings were clearly mutual, and the pair began dating. And a mere matter of weeks later, the pair would move into a 1-bedroom house together in West Hollywood. Sweeney, however, was no Prince Charming, and his true colors would soon begin to rear their ugly head. With his bouts of jealousy and possessiveness making themselves known, the relationship would quickly deteriorate, from verbal abuse to physical assault. According to one account, during an argument on August 27, 1982, Sweeney yanked handfuls of Dunn's hair out by the roots. Frightened, Dunn ran to her mother's house for sanctuary. Sweeney would later show up at the home, banging on doors and windows, demanding that he be let in. Dunn's mother not only refused him entry, but threatened to call the police. But a deadly pattern of behavior had already been established, and a deadly end was already set in motion. And a few days later, Dunne would return to their shared home, and the two reconciled and resumed their relationship. On September 26, 1982, Sweeney's temper would yet again present itself. It is reported that Sweeney grabbed Dunne by the throat, threw her to the floor, and, in a rage, started strangling her. A friend of the couple that was staying with him at the time reported that he had heard, quote, loud gagging sounds. Concerned with what he was hearing, he ran into the room and witnessed Dunne being physically attacked. Sweeney would deny accusations that he was trying to kill her and would try to defuse the situation, requesting he and Dunne retire to their bedroom to discuss things more amicably. Dunne would agree. However, in actuality, she had other ideas in mind and would instead sneak out of the house via the bedroom window. Although Sweeney would hear the car engine and would attempt to pursue Dunne, she successfully drove away, retreating back to her mother's house yet again, where she would remain for the following few days before calling Sweeney, officially ending their relationship. She requested that he move out of the West Hollywood home, where she would eventually move back after having the locks changed.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Do you like apples?
Yeah.
Yeah? Well, I go.
VENATOS.
How do you like them apples?
VENATOS is a premium gaming peripheral brand geared toward developing high-performance products. We're currently working toward creating new, exciting, and unique products not currently found on the market. With quality to match its sleek and beautiful design, I can honestly say that my VENATOS mouse is the best that I've ever owned, and I'm looking forward to expanding my collection of VENATOS products. VENATOS ships internationally with extremely low international shipping costs, and shipping is free to the US and Canada. Your products will arrive quickly and carefully packaged, with most orders arriving within 7 to 10 business days. If you're looking to upgrade your setup in an affordable way without substituting looks, VENATOS is an optimal choice, and when you use code PRESSSTARTMOM at checkout, VENATOS is offering a 10% discount on your order. You'll be doing Mom a solid, and you'll be doing yourself a solid. Everyone wins. Thank you so much to VENATOS for sponsoring this video. All appeared to be returning to normal for Dominique, who turned her attention and focus back to her acting career. On October 30th, nearly a month after the events that would lead to the end of the relationship, Dunne found herself at home with fellow actor David Parker, rehearsing a scene for their upcoming miniseries V. It would be while Dunne accepted a phone call from a female friend that Sweeney would have the operator break into the conversation, to which Dunne would utter, "Oh God, it's Sweeney. Let me get him off the phone." This, however, was not enough for Sweeney, who would show up at Dunne's house 10 minutes later, demanding she talk to him. Dunne would concede to a conversation through a locked door, and the conversation progressed quite civilly. So much so that Dunne would agree to continuing the conversation on the porch while Parker would remain inside. Once face to face, it would not take long for the conversation to dissolve into an argument. Parker would state when questioned later that he heard sounds that sounded like slapping, followed by 2 screams, followed by a thud. Concerned with the sounds he was hearing and fearing for his friend, Parker would call the police, who would frustratingly report that they could not respond to the call, as it was outside of their jurisdiction. Panicked, Parker phoned a friend and told him that if he were found dead, John Sweeney was his killer. In an attempt to escape and go for help, Parker snuck out of the home through the back entrance. He circled around to the front of the house and cautiously approached the driveway, where he would be met with a tragic scene. In the nearby bushes, Parker would spot Sweeney kneeling over the prone body of Dominique Dunn. Police would eventually, finally, be dispatched from the correct jurisdiction, but it would prove to be too late. Upon seeing the arrival of the police, Sweeney would calmly raise both hands above his head and surrender, walk slowly to the driveway, and proclaim, "I killed my girlfriend, and I tried to kill myself." He would be arrested without incident. Sweeney would later testify that he recalled arguing with Dunne, but that he didn't remember anything else that transpired during the exchange. He claimed that all he remembered was being on top of his ex-girlfriend, with his hands around her throat. Dunne was transported to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles and was placed on life support. Over the days that would follow, doctors would perform several brain scans and would determine that she had no brain activity due to oxygen deprivation. On November 4th, her parents would make the unenviable and heartbreaking decision to remove her from life support, allowing her to sleep and be at peace. Dominique Dunn would pass away that very night, having never regained consciousness. Initially on the night of the attack and upon his arrest, Sweeney was charged with attempted murder. Those charges would be dropped and replaced with the charge of first-degree murder and a subsequent charge of assault with intent to do great bodily harm, charges to which Sweeney would plead guilty. The trial of John Thomas Sweeney began in August of 1983 and was presided over by Judge Baron Katz. During the trial, Sweeney would take the stand in his own defense and would testify that it had never been his intention to harm Dunne. He would claim that, contrary to popular belief, the pair had recently reconciled and had in fact been discussing marriage and even the potential of starting a family, as they had plans of Sweeney moving back into the West Hollywood home. Sweeney would further testify that on the night of the attack, Dunne had recanted these promises, stating she had abruptly changed her mind and claiming that she had been leading him on and had no intention of getting back together. It was due to this seemingly heartless switch that Sweeney's temper would explode and he would lunge at Dunne. When he realized what he was doing, he claimed he made every attempt at reviving Dunne. He tried to encourage her to walk around, but she repeatedly fell down. When he noticed that Dunne was no longer breathing, he attempted CPR, which caused her to vomit, which led him to also vomit. Beginning to realize the full extent of what he had done, Sweeney ran back into the home, located 2 bottles of unnamed pills, and consumed both bottles before returning to the driveway and laying down beside his unconscious former love, waiting for the pills to take effect. Sweeney's court-appointed attorney, Michael Adelson, would claim that this was a crime of passion, provoked by the alleged betrayal and deception of a false hope for reconciliation prompted by Dunne. Victim blaming much? Sweeney's actions were neither premeditated nor intended with malice, citing the fact that Sweeney had attempted to revive Dunne, using the forethought to pull her tongue out of her throat to prevent choking. Dunne's family would rebuke the claims that Dunne had led Sweeney to believe a reconciliation was possible, in fact claiming that their daughter had informed them that she had told Sweeney in no uncertain terms that the breakup was permanent. The prosecution and police investigators would further dismiss Sweeney's version of events, as there was no physical evidence that any pills were consumed, as no traces were found in his body. Upon arriving on the scene, Deputy Frank D'Amelio would testify that Sweeney's demeanor was both calm and collected, stating to D'Amelio, "Man, I blew it. I killed her. I didn't think. I choked her that hard, but I don't know. I just kept on choking her. I lost my temper and blew it again." The medical examiner would dispute the claims of the strangulation being an unconscious act, as the autopsy performed would determine that Dunne had been strangled for a minimum of 3 minutes, and alleged that this was ample time for Sweeney to regain control of his actions, which would have resulted in Dunne surviving the attack. In an effort to establish a pattern of behavior and a history of violent tendencies, the prosecution would call upon Lillian Pierce, a woman that Sweeney had dated off and on between the years of 1977 and 1980, to testify. Pierce would claim that over the course of their relationship, she had been assaulted on 10 separate occasions, resulting in injuries including a perforated eardrum, a collapsed lung, and a broken nose. During Pierce's testimony, Sweeney's rage was on full display for the jury when he suddenly leapt from his seat, running towards the door of the judge's chambers. It would take 2 bailiffs and 4 armed guards to subdue Sweeney. He would then be handcuffed to his chair. He would cry and apologize to the court. The apology was accepted, and in a frustrating turn of events, Sweeney's attorney would request that Pierce's testimony be thrown out as inadmissible, citing her testimony as prejudicial. And for some reason, Judge Katz granted the request, and the jury only learned of the horrifying details of Pierce's testimony after the trial had concluded. Katz would go one step further with his staggeringly frustrating decision to refuse to allow the testimony of Dunne's mother, Ellen, as well as close friends of Dunne, seeing their testimony not as proof of a pattern of abuse, but as hearsay. Sweeney's attorney, Michael Adelson, would further request that Judge Katz rule that there was insufficient evidence to try Sweeney on the charge of first-degree murder, citing that premeditation had not been established as proven fact. Again, Katz would comply, and the charge was downgraded to manslaughter or second-degree murder. Deputy District Attorney Stephen Barshop would later state that this decision, along with the previous infuriating rulings by Judge Katz, seriously undermined the prosecution's case against Sweeney. I would love to say that this case has a happy ending, but when you're dealing with cursed films as your subject matter, this doesn't tend to be synonymous with happy endings. After 8 days of deliberation, on September 21st, 1983, the jury would acquit John Sweeney of second-degree murder, but found him guilty of the lesser voluntary manslaughter charge. He was further convicted of a misdemeanor assault charge stemming from the previous altercation that occurred on September 26th in 1982. Understandably so, Dunne's family would be utterly gutted by the verdict, calling it an outright injustice. Dominique Dunn, Dominique's father, would express the outrage, yelling at Katz when he would make a speech stating the judicial system had been upheld. Dunne would respond with, "Not for our family, Judge Katz." He would further go on to accuse Judge Katz of purposely withholding Pierce's testimony from the jury, which would have helped to establish Sweeney's history of violence against women. Judge Katz's treatment of the trial would not go unnoticed, and a victims' rights group by the name of Victims for Victims would stage a protest outside of the courthouse. One local Los Angeles television station would conduct a poll that would rank Judge Katz as the fourth worst judge in Los Angeles County. Sweeney was sentenced on November 7th of 1983 to 6 years in prison for manslaughter, which was the maximum sentence he could receive, and an additional 6 months for the assault charge. In a head-scratching turn of events, Judge Katz, potentially feeling the sting to his pride and ego from the criticisms he had been receiving, would criticize the jury's verdict of manslaughter, stating that he felt Dunne's death was, quote, a case, pure and simple, of murder with malice. Paul Spiegel, the jury foreman, would later tell the media that the entire jury pool had been surprised by the criticism and referred to Judge Katz's statement as a, quote, cheap shot, and went on to, in a slight dig to the circus that ringmaster Katz had created, say that if the jury had been provided the opportunity to hear all of the evidence, then Sweeney would most definitely have been convicted of murder. After the trial, John Sweeney would be incarcerated at a medium-security prison in Susanville, California. He would be granted parole in September of 1986, having only served 3 years, 7 months, and 27 days. After his release, Sweeney was hired as head chef at an upscale restaurant in Santa Monica, California. The Dunne family was frustrated that Sweeney's life seemed to be going great, right back to normal, while their daughter and sister was gone forever. The impact of losing Dominique had been profound, so much so that a year after her death, Dominique's mother, Ellen, founded Justice for Homicide Victims, a victims' rights advocacy group. But the injustices the family felt in knowing Dominique's killer was thriving and free was hard to bear. Dominique's brother Griffin would vehemently protest outside of Sweeney's place of employment, handing out flyers to patrons proclaiming, "The food you will eat tonight was cooked by the hands that killed Dominique Dunn." Due to the many protests from the Dunne family, Sweeney would eventually quit his job, moving away from Los Angeles. Dunne's father, Dominic, would employ the services of a private investigator by the name of Anthony Pellicano to follow and report on the actions and whereabouts of his daughter's murderer, always afraid that Sweeney was still a danger to society, right up until Dominic passed away in 2009. Sweeney would relocate to the Pacific Northwest, changing his name to John Mora, continuing to work as a chef, eventually marrying and starting a family. It would seem in this particular case that all signs pointed to tragedy. A crime of passion incited fatal violence and left a family forever changed, always seeking answers that they would never get. We see it time and time again. A tragic death leaves a permanent impact. Unfinished business, which this case had in spades, tends to create a residual perfect storm in its wake. Dunne was never truly granted justice for her horrific and tragic end. But the world refuses to forget the aspiring starlet that was taken from us right in the middle of her prime. The internet is laced with beautiful tributes to her. True crime documentaries and scathing commentaries on Sweeney. And in 2009, Charlie Crittenden Paranormal would conduct a spirit box session attempting to contact Dominique, and his findings were truly amazing. Charlie has graciously and kindly granted me permission to share some of the key moments of his video with you. Please consider going to his channel and watching the video in its entirety, and while you're there, check out some of his other videos and consider subscribing to his channel. But for now, here's a sneak peek.
Since passing away, have you been reunited in spirit with your co-star, Heather O'Rourke? Dominique Dunn was strangled to death on November the 4th, 1982, aged 22, in Los Angeles, California, USA. Dominique Dunn, you were murdered by your ex-lover, John Sweeney, whom I understand is still alive. Do you have a message for him? Do you believe the film was cursed?
When the world lost Dominique Dunn, they lost a truly gifted star whose talents were only just getting started. And unfortunately, the death of Dominique would also prove to be just the start for the tragedies of the cast and crew of Poltergeist. Illnesses, close calls, and tragically, a few more names for the death toll had yet to reveal themselves. But the clock was ticking, and time was running out. Thank you so much for once again joining me on our dark journey. We may just be a small corner of the YouTube universe, but we are small and mighty, and I promise many more tales to come in 2022. If you haven't already done so, please hit that like button and subscribe to be a part of the Press Start family. And also a small reminder that you only have until December 31st to order your Spooktober merch. Come January 1st, it will be gone forever. Another special thank you to VENATOS for once again sponsoring my video, and thank you for checking out VENATOS because it really helps out the channel. Until we meet again in the next one, be kind to one another, and remember, you are valid and loved just the way you are. Good night.
God is in His holy tent. Earthly thoughts be silent now, while we're there.
And I hope that they'll learn to forget all this soon.
They cannot learn by forgetting.
Well, what would you have me do? I mean, they're just children, for God's sake.
Children have fought wars. They've built nations. They are strong and have courage. Don't treat them any less than that because they're young.